First Contact and the Silent War. The comm station at Horizon's Edge was the first to go silent. Nestled on the outermost rim of human-explored space, the colony had been home to 15,000 souls, scientists, miners, farmers, and their families, all seeking the promise of a new beginning among unfamiliar stars. They had built a thriving community over the past decade, with gleaming domes protecting them from the harsh atmosphere of Kepler 186f, a planet that had once held such promise. Now, only silence remained. "Anything yet, Rodriguez?" Captain Wei Lin asked, her eyes fixed on the main view screen of the UNSC Harbinger. The response vessel had been dispatched immediately after Horizon's Edge missed 3 consecutive check-ins, unprecedented in colonial history. Communications Officer Rodriguez shook his head. "Nothing, Captain. All frequencies dead. Not even emergency beacons." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Colonial protocols mandated constant emergency transmitters, even in catastrophic power failures. For everything to be silent meant either a massive technical failure beyond all redundancies, or something far worse. "Life signs?" Lynn asked, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her stomach. "Nothing conclusive at this range," Science Officer Capri replied. "But thermal patterns are unusual. Temperature variations where there shouldn't be." Captain Lynn nodded, making her decision. "Prepare landing teams. Full tactical gear. I want boots on the ground in 30 minutes." Among those preparing for deployment was Commander Ilara Voss, head of the Harbinger's security detachment. At 35, Voss had seen her share of colonial disasters, pirate raids, environmental catastrophes, even the occasional alien microbe causing havoc. But something about this mission felt different. The silence was too complete, too deliberate. As she secured her exosuit and checked her pulse rifle, Lieutenant Marcus Chen approached, his own gear already prepped. "What do you think happened down there, Commander?" Chen asked, voice low enough that the rest of the team couldn't hear. Voss locked eyes with him. "I don't know. But whatever it is, we're bringing our people home." The descent to Horizon's Edge was smooth, almost eerily so. No communications interference, no atmospheric anomalies, just silence. As the dropship broke through the cloud cover, the colony came into view, its familiar domes intact, the mining operations to the east appearing undisturbed. But one detail immediately struck everyone on board. No lights. The entire settlement lay dark under the alien sun. No visible structural damage, the pilot noted. "Power grid appears offline." Commander Voss nodded. "Take us down at the main administrative complex. Standard perimeter formation once we're on the ground." The moment the dropship doors opened, Voss knew something was profoundly wrong. The air inside her helmet sensors registered normal. The atmospheric processors were still functioning, but the colony itself felt dead. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. "Fan out. Teams of 3. Check for survivors," she ordered, her voice calm despite the growing sense of dread. "Chen, Okoro, you're with me. We're heading for the command center." The administrative building stood untouched, its doors unlocked. Inside, workstations sat abandoned, some with half-empty coffee mugs, others with personal items still arranged neatly. Family photos, small plants, the everyday tokens of human existence. "It's like everyone just vanished," Chen whispered. They proceeded deeper into the complex, finding more of the same. No signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies, just emptiness, as if the entire population had simultaneously decided to step away and never return. The command center's doors were sealed, the only ones they had encountered so far. Voss overrode the security with her emergency codes, and the massive doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss. What they found inside stopped them cold. The walls of the command center were covered in strange, swirling symbols, etched deep into the metal. Not painted, carved, as if by impossibly sharp instruments. The symbols pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, casting an eerie blue glow throughout the room. "What the hell?" Okoro breathed, her rifle raised instinctively. In the center of the room, the colony administrator's desk had been cleared, and a single object sat upon it. A crystalline structure about the size of a human skull, its facets reflecting the blue glow of the symbols. And behind the desk, on the main viewing wall, 5 words had been carved. "The harvest has begun." "Wraiths." "Wraiths?" Chen asked, looking to Voss. "Is that supposed to mean something?" Before Voss could answer, her comms crackled. "Commander, this is Team 3. You need to see this. Residential Sector B, Building 12. 10 minutes later, Voss stood in what had once been a family apartment. A child's toys were scattered across the floor. Dinner plates still sat on the table, food half-eaten. But what drew everyone's attention was the window, or rather, what lay beyond it. In the central plaza of the residential sector, visible from this vantage point, thousands of shadows had been burned into the ground. Human-shaped shadows, frozen in various poses, running, standing, reaching upward. Some adult-sized, some unmistakably children. Like Hiroshima, someone whispered, but no radiation readings. No bodies, Voss noted. Just impressions. Captain Lin's voice came through on the command channel. "All teams report back to the Harbinger immediately. Bring that crystal object. We're implementing quarantine protocols." 2 hours later, the senior officers gathered in the Harbinger's secure briefing room. The crystal sat in a containment field at the center of the table, still pulsing with its eerie light. "Analysis confirms it's not of human origin," Science Officer Captry reported. "The material doesn't match any known element or compound. It appears to be alive, in some sense. Self-sustaining energy signature." "And the symbols?" Captain Lin asked. "We've run them through every linguistic database. No matches, but the configuration suggests a language, not random patterns." Commander Voss leaned forward. "And the word wraiths? Any references in our databases?" The room fell silent as Information Officer Park cleared his throat. 1. A single reference, from a deep space probe that went dark near the Cygnus Arm 50 years ago. Its final transmission included a warning about entities it called wraiths. The message was dismissed as a system malfunction. "What did the warning say?" Lin asked. "They do not invade. They do not conquer. They harvest. They are the wraiths, and they hunt for sport." The implications hung heavy in the air. 15,000 colonists gone without a trace. No bodies, no struggle, just shadows burned into the ground. "We need to contact Earth Command immediately," Lin decided. "Full quarantine protocols remain in effect. No one else sets foot on that planet." As the officers filed out, Voss remained, staring at the crystal. "They left this deliberately," she said quietly. "They wanted us to find it." "A message?" Captain Lin asked. "A warning. Or a challenge?" Voss's eyes narrowed. "Either way, they've made a fundamental mistake." "What's that, Commander?" "They've revealed themselves. And now we know they exist." 3 months later, Commander Ilara Voss stood in the war room of the newly commissioned UNSC Vengeance, Earth's most advanced warship. Around her, 24 officers from various military branches studied holographic displays showing the 7 colony worlds that had gone silent since Horizon's Edge. Admiral Helena Zhang, the highest-ranking officer in Earth's space forces, addressed the assembled group. "The pattern is clear. Each attack leaves the same signature. No structural damage, no bodies, just those shadow impressions. And each site contains variations of the same symbols, along with one of these." She gestured to a case containing 7 crystals, identical to the one found at Horizon's Edge. "We've confirmed through deep space telemetry that these attacks are synchronized. They happen simultaneously, despite the vast distances between colonies, and each colony is progressively closer to Earth." A holographic map illustrated her point, showing a contracting spiral of attacks moving inward toward humanity's homeworld. "They're testing us," Voss said, speaking for the first time, "gauging our response capabilities." Zhang nodded. "That's our assessment as well, Commander, which is why you're here." She activated another display, showing a sleek black vessel unlike any in Earth's fleet. "This is the Nightshade. Stealth frigate, experimental propulsion, and our most advanced weapon systems. Your new command." Voss blinked in surprise. "Admiral, Operation Nightfall is now in effect. Your mission is simple. Track these wraiths back to their source and gather intelligence. We need to know what we're facing. With respect, Admiral, we've lost 7 colonies, thousands of people. Shouldn't we be focusing on defense?" Zhang's expression hardened. "We can't defend against what we don't understand, Commander. These entities can apparently translocate entire populations without a trace. They leave no radiation signature, no warp trails, nothing our sensors can track. We need to know how they operate before we can stop them." Voss studied the mission parameters displayed before her. The Nightshade would carry a small, elite crew, scientists, soldiers, and specialists pulled from across Earth's military forces. "You ship out in 48 hours, Zhang continued. "Your XO is already aboard, overseeing final preparations." A file appeared on Voss's tablet. Lieutenant Commander Samir Khalid, former Special Forces, decorated for actions during the Mars insurrection. The rest of the crew were similarly distinguished, including Dr. Maya Okonkwo, the xenobiologist who had made the breakthrough in understanding the crystalline artifacts. "One more thing, Commander," Zhang said as the meeting disbanded. "The Nightshade's AI system is the most advanced we've ever deployed. We call it ATLAS, Adaptive Tactical Logistics and Strategy System. It's been analyzing every scrap of data from the attack sites. It may be your most valuable crew member." Voss nodded, her mind already racing through mission preparations. "We'll find them, Admiral. And when we do." Zhang's eyes were cold as steel. "Then humanity shows these wraiths they picked the wrong species to hunt." The Nightshade moved silently through the void, its revolutionary propulsion system leaving no detectable wake. 3 weeks into their mission, the ship hovered at the edge of the Ta-Ceti system, site of the most recent wraith attack. On the bridge, Commander Voss reviewed Dr. Okonkwo's latest findings. The scientist had been studying the crystal artifacts nonstop, convinced they were the key to understanding their enemy. "It's communicating," Okonkwo explained, excitement evident despite her exhaustion. "Not actively, more like a recording, and ATLAS has finally deciphered enough of the symbols to extract meaning." A holographic display showed the swirling alien script, portions highlighted in red. These sections describe the wraiths themselves. "They're not a species as we understand it. They're a collective. Different biological entities united by some kind of shared consciousness." Lieutenant Commander Khalid frowned. "A hive mind? More complex than that." Atlas interjected, its androgynous voice filling the bridge. "Based on the limited data available, the Wraith Collective appears to be composed of multiple species, all transformed or evolved through some unknown process." "Transformed how?" Voss asked. "The closest analogy would be technological ascension," Okonkwo said. "They've somehow merged biological evolution with technological enhancement at a fundamental level. And according to these records, they've been doing this for millions of years. Hunting other species," Voss concluded. "Harvesting them, as they put it. For sport, yes. But also for..." Okonkwo hesitated. "Consumption isn't quite the right word. Absorption might be better. They integrate aspects of harvested species into their collective." Khalid shook his head in disgust. "They're predators. Galactic apex predators." "Which makes no evolutionary sense," Okonkwo countered. "Predators evolve alongside prey in balanced ecosystems. These wraiths are something else entirely. They're deliberate, methodical." "Commander," the sensor officer interrupted, "we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations in Sector 7. Pattern matches the residual signatures from Colony Aravis. Voss straightened. Battle stations. Stealth protocols remain in effect. Let's see what we're dealing with. The main view screen shifted, showing a seemingly empty region of space. But as they watched, reality itself appeared to ripple, like heat waves over desert sand. Then, without warning, a massive structure phased into existence. It wasn't a ship, at least not in any conventional sense. It resembled a crystalline lattice, miles across, with no obvious propulsion system or external features. It pulsed with the same eerie blue light as the artifacts. "Life signs?" Voss asked, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "Inconclusive," the science officer replied. "But energy readings are off the charts. It's generating power equivalent to a small star." As they watched, smaller structures began detaching from the main lattice, sleek, predatory shapes that moved with impossible grace. "Hunter vessels," Khalid murmured. "They're deploying." Voss made her decision. "Maintain stealth. Track one of those hunters. We follow it back to wherever they call home." For 3 days, the Nightshade shadowed a single Wraith Hunter vessel as it moved through a series of what Atlas identified as phase jumps. Not quite warp travel, not quite quantum tunneling, but something in between. The technology was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Finally, the Hunter vessel approached what appeared to be its destination, a massive structure floating in deep space, far from any star system. The structure dwarfed even the crystalline lattice they had observed earlier, stretching for hundreds of miles in all directions. "It's a hub," Atlas noted. "Analysis suggests multiple phase corridors converging at this location, a nexus point for their activities." Voss studied the tactical display. "Can we get closer without being detected?" "Negative," Khalid replied. "They'll have defenses we can't even comprehend. We should maintain distance and observe." Before Voss could respond, Atlas interrupted. "Commander, I'm detecting an unusual transmission from the hub. It appears to be broadcasting." "To whom?" Voss asked. "To multiple locations across this sector, I believe." The AI paused. "Commander, I believe they're coordinating their next harvest, and based on the transmission patterns, Earth is the target." Voss's blood ran cold. "How soon?" "Time calculations are difficult with their phase technology, but approximately 72 hours. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth had defenses, certainly, the best humanity could devise, but against an enemy that could make entire populations vanish without a trace. They wouldn't stand a chance. "Options?" Voss asked, looking around the bridge. Khalid straightened. "We could attempt to disrupt the hub. Even with our limited understanding of their technology, a precisely targeted strike might delay them. Or alert them to our presence," the tactical officer countered. "We have exactly one advantage right now. They don't know we're watching." Dr. Okonkwo had been silent, studying her data with increasing intensity. Now she looked up, her expression a mixture of fear and excitement. "Commander, there's something else in the transmission. Something Atlas missed." The AI's avatar flickered. "Clarify, Doctor." "Not missed," couldn't interpret. "It's not data, it's emotion." She brought up a new display, showing energy patterns within the Wraith transmission. "These oscillations don't carry information, they carry feeling. And this particular pattern." She highlighted a recurring sequence. "This is fear." Voss leaned forward. "They're afraid." "Of what?" "Not what. Who?" Okonkwo's eyes gleamed. "There are references in the data to other species, previous harvests. But there's a specific pattern associated with humans that doesn't appear with any other species. They're afraid of us." "That's absurd," Khalid interjected. "They've harvested our colonies without resistance." "Without apparent resistance," Okonkwo corrected. "But what if they encountered something unexpected? Something that made them cautious?" Voss's mind raced. The crystal artifacts. They left them deliberately, like warnings or trophies. Why do that unless they were marking their territory? Unless they wanted to intimidate us? Atlas processed this information. There is a 78.6% probability that the Wraiths are implementing a strategic approach to humanity different from their standard harvest protocols. The question is why? The answer came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Rivera, the communications specialist who had barely spoken since the mission began. "Because we fought back," she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. At Horizon's edge, the colony administrator's last transmission before everything went silent. It wasn't a distress call. It was a message of defiance. She pulled up the archive, and a man's voice filled the bridge, calm despite the chaos audible in the background. They came without warning. They took hundreds in seconds, but we've wounded one of them. I repeat, we have wounded one of their kind. They can be hurt. They can be. The transmission ended abruptly. They've never encountered resistance before, Voss realized. They expect their prey to be helpless. A plan began forming in her mind, audacious, perhaps suicidal, but potentially humanity's only chance. Atlas, could we use their own transmission protocols to send a message back to Earth? Theoretically, yes, the eye replied. But any message would be detected by the Wraiths. Good. Voss's eyes hardened, because I want them to hear exactly what I'm about to say. Within hours, the Nightshade had positioned itself at the optimal transmission point, piggybacking on the Wraith's own communication network. Voss stood before the ship's recording array, her uniform crisp, her expression resolute. "This is Commander Ilara Voss of the United Nations Space Command vessel Nightshade. I address this message to Earth Command, and to the entities known as the Wraiths." She paused, letting the gravity of her words sink in. "We have observed your operations. We have studied your methods. We understand what you are and what you intend. And we have one message for you. Humanity is not prey." Voss leaned closer to the recorder, her voice dropping to a cold, precise tone. "You have harvested our colonies, thinking us helpless. But even in those first encounters, we wounded you. We made you fear. And now we know why." She allowed herself a small, predatory smile. "You hunt for sport. We fight for survival. There is no contest in that equation. So we offer you one chance, one opportunity to retreat from human space and never return. Otherwise, what follows will not be a harvest. It will be a war. And humanity has never lost a war when our survival was at stake." As she finished, Khalid whispered, "They'll come for us. They'll know our position instantly." "I'm counting on it," Voss replied. "Tactical, arm all weapons. Prepare maneuvering thrusters and activate the prototype." Deep within the Nightshade, a device unlike any other in humanity's arsenal hummed to life. The culmination of 3 months of frantic reverse engineering based on the Wraith artifacts. No one knew if it would work. No one could predict the consequences if it did. But as the first Wraith hunter vessels appeared on their sensors, phase jumping into position around the Nightshade, Voss gave the order without hesitation. "Initiate phase disruptor. Let's show these predators they've made a fundamental miscalculation." The universe seemed to hold its breath, and then erupted in blinding light as humanity struck its first real blow against the Wraiths. The hunt had changed, and for the first time in their ancient existence, the galaxy's apex predators were about to become prey. The hunters become the hunted. The phase disruptor tore through space-time like a knife through silk. For a moment, the universe around the Nightshade seemed to stutter, reality itself fragmenting into crystalline shards that hung suspended in the void. The approaching Wraith vessels froze mid-phase, caught between dimensions, vulnerable in a way they had never been before. "Fire," Commander Voss ordered, her voice steady despite the impossible scene unfolding before them. The Nightshade's weapons lanced out, conventional in design, but loaded with payloads derived from the crystalline artifacts. Where they struck, the Wraith vessels didn't explode or break apart. They simply ceased to exist, collapsing in on themselves like stars going supernova in reverse. 3 direct hits, Tactical Officer Rahman reported, unable to keep the awe from his voice. 2 more vessels retreating. On the main view screen, the surviving Wraith Hunters were fleeing, their movements suddenly erratic, uncoordinated. For perhaps the first time in their ancient existence, they were experiencing fear. "They're broadcasting," Communications Officer Rivera said. "Wideband distress signals. They're panicking." Voss allowed herself a grim smile. "Good. Atlas, how long until the phase disruptor requires cooldown?" "Approximately 7 minutes, Commander," the AI replied. "The system was never designed for sustained operation. Then we have 7 minutes to press our advantage." Voss turned to her XO. "Khalid, tactical analysis. What's our best target on that hub?" Lieutenant Commander Khalid studied the sensor readings, his expression calculating. "There's an energy nexus near what appears to be their central communications array. If we can destabilize it, set a course. Maximum thrust." Voss addressed the entire bridge crew. "This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about sending a message that will echo across the galaxy. Humanity is not to be trifled with." The Nightshade surged forward, its experimental engines pushing the vessel to speeds no human ship had ever achieved. They crossed the vast distance to the Wraith Hub in minutes, the massive structure growing to fill their view screen, a nightmarish amalgamation of technology and organic matter, pulsing with malevolent energy. "Multiple defense systems activating," Rahman warned. "They're adapting to our presence." "Evasive pattern Delta," Voss ordered. "Maintain trajectory toward the energy nexus." The Nightshade danced through space, narrowly avoiding energy beams that seemed to bend reality itself. One glancing blow sent alarms blaring throughout the ship. "Port shields failing," engineering reported. "Hull integrity at 82%. Phase disruptor cooldown complete," Atlas announced. "Target the nexus and fire," Voss commanded. Once again, reality fractured around them as the disruptor activated. This time, the effect was exponentially greater. The energy nexus at the heart of the Wraith Hub caught the full force of the disruption field, and for a moment, everything stopped. Then the hub began to collapse, sections phasing in and out of existence as the carefully balanced energies that sustained it destabilized. The destruction wasn't physical in any conventional sense. It was as if portions of the structure were being selectively erased from reality itself. "Get us out of here," Voss ordered. "Maximum distance before that thing completely destabilizes." The Nightshade's engines burned white-hot as the ship accelerated away from the disintegrating hub. Behind them, space itself seemed to fold inward, light bending impossibly as the Wraith structure imploded. "Energy spike," Science Officer Tran shouted. "Brace for." The shockwave hit before she could finish, sending the Nightshade tumbling through space. Emergency systems blared as crew members were thrown from their stations. Voss clung to her command chair, watching as systems failed across the board. "Damage report," she called out when the ship finally stabilized. "Multiple hull breaches, emergency containment holding," Khalid replied, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Engines at 40% capacity, weapons offline. But we're alive." "And the hub?" Atlas answered, its synthetic voice somehow conveying awe. "Completely destroyed, Commander. Sensors detect a quantum singularity where it once stood, a tear in spacetime approximately 2.7 kilometers in diameter." "We did it," Dr. Okonkwo whispered, staring at the view screen where a swirling vortex now occupied the space that had held the Wraith Hub. "We actually hurt them." "Not just hurt them," Voss corrected. "We've crippled their command structure, disrupted their ability to coordinate their harvest." She turned to communications. "Rivera, any Wraith transmissions?" "Scattered, chaotic," Rivera replied. "They're in disarray." Voss nodded, satisfaction evident despite her exhaustion. "Set course for Earth. Maximum sustainable speed. We need to report what we've learned and prepare for their counterattack." You think they'll strike back immediately? Khalid asked. I'm counting on it, Voss replied. Because now, for the first time in their existence, they'll be fighting angry, emotional, uncoordinated. In other words, Dr. Okonkwo said with growing understanding, they'll be fighting like us. The Nightshade limped back to Earth over the course of 2 weeks, its damaged systems barely holding together. When they finally arrived, they found humanity transformed, a civilization mobilized for war on a scale never before seen. Admiral Zhang greeted Voss personally as she disembarked at the orbital station New Armstrong. Your message reached us, Commander, along with partial telemetry from your engagement with the Wraith Hub. Impressive work. Thank you, Admiral, but I expect they'll retaliate soon. They've never encountered resistance like this before. Their entire identity is built around being apex predators. Zhang nodded grimly. Walk with me. As they moved through the station corridors, Voss was struck by the activity around them. Military personnel rushing to and fro, civilians being evacuated, weapons systems being installed in every available space. We've initiated the Aegis Protocol, Zhang explained. Every ship capable of combat has been recalled to the Sol system. Every colony has been evacuated where possible or heavily fortified where not, and we've been busy with some developments of our own. They entered a secure observation deck, and Zhang gestured to the viewport. Outside, a fleet of ships unlike anything Voss had ever seen hung in Earth's orbit, sleek, predatory vessels with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Harbinger class, Zhang said with evident pride. Designed based on the data you sent back. Phase-capable drives, disruption weapons, adaptive shielding. We've been preparing for this moment since the first colony went silent. Voss stared at the armada, a mix of awe and vindication washing over her. How many? 50 completed. Another 100 under construction. And that's just the beginning. Zhang's eyes hardened. The Wraiths thought they could hunt us at their leisure. They're about to discover that humanity doesn't take kindly to being preyed upon. What's our next move? Voss asked. That largely depends on your report, Commander. You've seen these things up close. You've damaged them. What's your assessment? Voss considered carefully before responding. They're powerful, ancient, and arrogant, but they're not invincible. They've survived this long because no species has ever had the chance to study them, to understand their methods before being harvested. And now we have, Zhang noted. Exactly. The data we've gathered suggests their technological advantage isn't as vast as it first appeared. They've relied on stealth and fear more than raw power. Voss's expression turned calculating. And there's one more thing, Admiral. They don't understand us. How so? The Wraiths evolved as apex predators. Their entire existence is based on being the hunters, never the hunted. But humans, Voss smiled grimly. We evolved being hunted. Our earliest ancestors survived by outsmarting predators, by turning the tables. It's encoded in our DNA in a way the Wraiths can't comprehend. Zhang nodded slowly, understanding dawning. So we use that against them. We become the predators they fear we might be. The next 3 days passed in a blur of briefings, planning sessions, and preparations. Voss found herself elevated to a position of unprecedented authority, her first-hand experience with the Wraiths making her invaluable to Earth's defense planning. Dr. Okonkwo's research team had made further breakthroughs in understanding the crystalline artifacts, discovering that they functioned as both recording devices and navigational beacons. The Wraiths had been mapping human territory, marking it for systematic harvest. We can use these to track them, Okonkwo explained during a high-level briefing. Reverse engineer their own technology to locate their remaining command structures. Meanwhile, Atlas had been integrated with Earth's defense network, its unique insights into Wraith behavior helping to predict potential attack vectors. The AI's projections suggested an 89.7% probability that the Wraiths would launch a massive coordinated strike against Earth within the next week, a desperate attempt to eliminate the first species that had ever truly threatened them. What no one expected was the timing of their arrival. Multiple phase signatures detected. The alert blared throughout New Armstrong Station, just hours after the strategic briefing concluded. Massive Wraith fleet materializing in Sector 7. Voss raced to the command center, joining Zhang and Earth's military leadership as they assessed the unfolding situation. The tactical display showed hundreds of Wraith vessels appearing at the edge of the solar system, a force far larger than anyone had anticipated. "They've committed everything," Zhang murmured. "This isn't just retaliation. This is extinction-level aggression." "They're scared," Voss realized. "We hurt them worse than we thought. They're not taking any chances." The Wraith fleet moved with eerie coordination, spreading out to surround the Sol system in a three-dimensional net. Their strategy was clear: no escape, no mercy, total harvesting of humanity's homeworld. "Activate the Harbinger fleet," Zhang ordered. "All civilian shelters to maximum security protocols. This is not a drill." As Earth's defenders moved to intercept the approaching Wraiths, something unexpected happened. The enemy fleet suddenly paused, their formation faltering. Then, without warning, dozens of smaller vessels detached from the main force, but instead of attacking, they appeared to be fleeing, racing away from the solar system at maximum speed. "What the hell?" Khalid, who had joined Voss in the command center, stared at the display in confusion. Atlas' avatar appeared on the main screen. Analysis suggests internal conflict within the Wraith Collective. The smaller vessels appear to be operating independently of the main command structure. "Civil war?" Zhang asked incredulously. "More basic than that," Dr. Okonkwo interjected, studying her own data. "Fear response. Look at their energy signatures. The fleeing vessels show patterns consistent with panic, not strategic withdrawal." Before anyone could process this information, a new alert sounded, different from the Wraith detection system. "Unknown vessels approaching from vectors 227 by 114. The sensor officer reported. "Hundreds of them. Configuration doesn't match Wraith signatures or any known human design." The command center fell silent as the newcomers appeared on the tactical display, a diverse fleet of vessels, each unique in design but moving with coordinated purpose. "They're broadcasting," Rivera reported, surprise evident in her voice. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. Translation software is struggling, but the intent is clear. They're offering assistance." "Who are they?" Zhang demanded. Dr. Okonkwo's eyes widened as she studied the data. "Survivors. Other species who were partially harvested by the Wraiths, but managed to preserve enough of their civilization to rebuild. They've been watching, waiting for someone to successfully strike back." "Commander," Atlas interjected, "analysis of their communications indicates they've been monitoring our conflict with the Wraiths. Your message, the one you broadcast from the Nightshade, reached farther than intended. It became a beacon for these species." Voss stared at the display, watching as the Allied fleet moved to engage the Wraiths from behind, catching them in a pincer movement with Earth's forces. They were waiting for someone to stand up to the predators, she realized. Waiting for proof it could be done. The battle that followed would later be known as the liberation of Sol, a turning point not just for humanity, but for dozens of species across the galaxy. The Wraiths, caught between Earth's defenses and the vengeful survivors of their previous harvests, found themselves outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. Earth's phase disruptors, now mounted on the Harbinger fleet, tore through Wraith vessels with devastating efficiency. The allied species brought their own weapons to bear, technologies developed in secret over centuries of hiding and rebuilding. Within hours, the Wraith fleet was in full retreat, their carefully constructed hunter mythos shattered beyond repair. 1 month later, Commander Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned United Species vessel Hope, watching as representatives from 27 different civilizations gathered in Earth's orbit. The Galactic Accord, as it was already being called, represented an unprecedented alliance, species united not by common biology or shared history, but by their collective defiance of predation. They're calling you the Predator Slayer. You know, Lieutenant Commander Khalid said as he joined her by the viewport. The alien delegates can't stop talking about it. Voss smiled wryly. They give me too much credit. It was humanity as a whole that turned the tide. Don't sell yourself short, Commander. Your message changed everything. You showed the galaxy that the Wraiths could be beaten. She nodded thoughtfully, watching as an elegantly shaped vessel from the Etheri, a species thought extinct for 3 centuries, docked with the station. What happens now, I wonder? The Wraiths are in retreat, but they're still out there, still dangerous. Now, Khalid's expression hardened. Now we hunt them, all of us together. Turn their game against them until they understand what it means to be prey. Admiral Zhang approached, accompanied by representatives from 3 alien species. Commander Voss, allow me to introduce Ambassador Cathal of the Maverin Remnant, First Speaker Shoreth of the Lindari Collective, and Patriarch Vesh of the Etheri Dominion. They've specifically requested to meet you. The aliens, each wildly different in form and feature, regarded Voss with what she recognized, despite their alien physiologies, as profound respect. Ambassador Cathal, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, spoke first. Commander Voss, the Maverin were among the first to be harvested by the Wraiths. For 30,000 years, we have hidden, preserved what little remained of our civilization. We believed ourselves alone in our suffering. We all did, added First Speaker Shoreth, whose crystalline body pulsed with inner light. Each of us thought ourselves the only survivors, too afraid to reach out, to reveal ourselves. And then came humanity, Patriarch Vesh concluded, his multiple eyes blinking in complex patterns, who, when faced with the galaxy's most ancient predators, chose not defiance, but counterstrike, who saw monsters and became monsters to fight them. Voss shook her head. Not monsters, just survivors like you. We simply refuse to accept extinction. That, Cathal said with evident admiration, is precisely what makes your species so remarkable. The Wraiths have never encountered prey that fights back. They have no concept of resistance, of vengeance. They do now, Zhang noted grimly. Indeed. Shoreth's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been amusement. And that is why we have come. The Galactic Accord is more than an alliance. It is a hunting party. We will find the Wraiths wherever they hide. We will liberate the species they have subjugated. And we will ensure they never harvest again. Voss looked out at the gathered fleet, human vessels alongside the ships of species she hadn't known existed just weeks ago, all united by a common purpose, a shared determination. The Predators made one fundamental mistake, she said quietly. They attacked humans. Patriarch Vesh's many eyes blinked in agreement, and in doing so, they created something they never anticipated, a galaxy that fights back. As the representatives discussed the details of their new alliance, Voss felt a profound sense of irony. The Wraiths had hunted civilizations for millions of years, harvesting countless species for sport, for consumption, for the simple joy of proving their superiority. But in humanity, they had found something they couldn't comprehend. Prey that refused to accept its role. Prey that studied its hunters, learned their weaknesses, and turned the tables. Prey that became predator. And as the gathered fleet prepared to embark on the first coordinated hunt for the Wraiths, Voss knew with absolute certainty that the galaxy would never be the same again. The age of the hunters was over. The age of justice had begun.